The desert air shimmered with heat as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos checked her equipment list one final time. The ammunition depot at Forward Operating Base Phoenix buzzed with the constant activity of soldiers preparing for another mission. Apache helicopters lined the tarmac like sleeping giants, their rotors still in the blazing afternoon sun. Maria had been loading ammunition for these war machines for 3 years now. Every day was the same routine. Check the manifest, load the rounds, ensure proper balance, and send the pilots off into the dangerous skies above Afghanistan. She knew every type of ammunition by heart: 30mm chain gun rounds, Hydra rockets, Hellfire missiles, each one capable of devastating destruction, each one requiring her careful attention to detail. Today felt different, though. Colonel Harrison had pulled her aside that morning with unusual urgency in his voice. "Santos, we've got a priority mission today. Black Ops level clearance. You're the only ammo tech I trust with this one." He handed her a sealed envelope with classification markings she'd never seen before. "Follow these instructions exactly. No questions, no deviations." The envelope contained specifications for a special ammunition load, a combination of rounds she'd never seen configured together. There were also photographs of markings she needed to look for on the pilot. The instructions were clear, but strange. If pilot bears the designated markings, abort loading immediately and report to command. Maria studied the photographs carefully. They showed a tattoo, an intricate design featuring an eagle with spread wings. But not just any eagle. This one had symbols beneath it that looked almost ancient, like something from a history book. The detail was remarkable, and whoever had this tattoo had paid serious money for the artwork. As she walked toward the Apache designated for the mission, Maria noticed the pilot performing his pre-flight inspection. Captain Jake Morrison was known around the base as one of the best helicopter pilots in the unit. He was tall and lean, with the kind of confidence that came from hundreds of combat missions. Maria had loaded ammunition for his bird dozens of times, but they'd rarely spoken beyond the necessary technical briefings. The ammunition she was loading today was heavier than usual. Each round seemed to carry extra weight, and not just physically. There was something about this mission that made her hands shake slightly as she worked. The sealed orders had mentioned this was a deep reconnaissance mission into territory that hadn't been mapped by American forces, the kind of mission that pilots sometimes didn't return from. Morrison approached as she was securing the last of the Hellfire missiles to the helicopter's wing pylons. "Afternoon, Santos. Heavy load today." His voice carried the usual professional tone, but there was something in his eyes that seemed different, a kind of tension she hadn't noticed before. "Yes, sir. Special configuration as requested." Maria kept her responses short and professional, but she found herself studying his arms as he reached up to check the missile connections. The flight suit covered most of his skin, but she could see the edge of what looked like a tattoo on his right forearm. "Everything secure?" Morrison asked, running his hand along the missile mount. As he did, his sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing more of the tattoo. Maria's breath caught in her throat. It was definitely artwork, but she couldn't see enough to determine if it matched the photographs in her sealed orders. "Yes, sir. All systems checked and verified." She tried to keep her voice steady, but her heart was racing. Should she ask to see more of the tattoo? How could she do that without seeming suspicious? The instructions had been clear about maintaining operational security. Morrison nodded and began walking around the aircraft for his final inspection. Maria watched him carefully, looking for any opportunity to get a better view of his arm. The desert wind picked up, blowing dust across the tarmac and causing everyone to squint against the gritty air. As Morrison reached up to check the rotor head, his sleeve pulled back again. This time Maria could see more of the design. Her heart stopped. The eagle was there, spread wings and all, exactly as shown in the photograph. But she needed to see the symbols beneath it to be certain. "Captain Morrison," she called out, her voice slightly louder than necessary. "Could you double-check the ammunition count with me? I want to make sure everything matches your mission requirements." Morrison turned and walked back toward her. "Sure thing, Santos. What do you need me to verify?" Maria pulled out her clipboard and positioned herself so she could see his right arm clearly. "If you could just point to each missile as I read the serial numbers, that would help confirm our inventory." As Morrison raised his arm to point at the first Hellfire missile, his sleeve fell back completely. There it was, the eagle with spread wings, and, beneath it, 3 symbols that matched the photograph exactly. Ancient-looking markings that seemed out of place on a modern soldier's arm. Maria's training kicked in. According to her orders, she should abort the loading immediately and report to command. But Morrison was already strapped into his helicopter, and the mission was scheduled to launch in 15 minutes. Other crew members were performing final checks, and the co-pilot was running through instrument diagnostics. She looked at the tattoo again, memorizing every detail. The eagle's eyes seemed to stare directly at her, and the symbols beneath appeared to shift slightly in the desert heat. Maria had seen many tattoos during her military service, but nothing like this. The artwork was too precise, too meaningful to be just decorative body art. Santos? Everything okay? Morrison's voice snapped her back to reality. He was looking at her with concern, clearly noticing her distracted behavior. Yes, sir, just double-checking our procedures. Maria forced a professional smile. All ammunition properly loaded and secured. You're cleared for departure. Morrison studied her face for a moment longer, then nodded. Thanks, Santos. You always do excellent work. He turned and walked toward the pilot's door of the Apache. As Maria watched him climb into the cockpit, her mind raced. She had clear orders to abort the mission if she found those markings. But she also had years of training that told her to support the mission and trust her fellow soldiers. Morrison was a decorated pilot with an exemplary service record. What could possibly be wrong with sending him on this reconnaissance mission? The helicopter's engines began their startup sequence, filling the air with the distinctive whine of turbines spinning to life. Maria gathered her equipment and began walking back toward the ammunition depot. She had a decision to make, and she had less than 10 minutes to make it. The sealed envelope felt heavy in her pocket as she walked. Inside were her orders, clear and direct. But watching Morrison prepare for what could be a dangerous mission made her question everything. Was she supposed to ground one of their best pilots based on a tattoo? What if the mission was critical to saving other soldiers' lives? As she reached the entrance to the ammunition depot, Maria turned back to look at the Apache one final time. Morrison was going through his final checks, completely unaware that his tattoo had triggered a security protocol. The rotor blades began their slow rotation, building speed for takeoff. Maria pulled out her radio and held it in her trembling hand. One call to command would stop everything. But looking at Morrison's professional demeanor and remembering his service record made her hesitate. Sometimes in the military, you had to trust your instincts about people, even when orders suggested otherwise. The radio crackled with routine communications as Maria stood frozen between duty and intuition. The Apache's rotors reached full speed, and she knew she was almost out of time. Whatever decision she made in the next few moments would change everything, not just for Morrison, but potentially for the entire mission and everyone depending on its success. Maria's finger hovered over the radio transmit button as the Apache's engines reached full power. The sound was deafening, drowning out her racing thoughts. She watched Morrison complete his final instrument checks through the cockpit glass, his movements precise and confident. This was a man who had flown hundreds of successful missions, saved countless lives, and never given anyone reason to doubt his loyalty. But the orders in her pocket were explicit. The photographs showed exactly what she had seen on Morrison's arm. The eagle tattoo with those strange symbols beneath it was apparently significant enough that someone high up the chain of command wanted any mission aborted if a pilot bore those markings. Control Tower. This is Apache 77 requesting clearance for departure. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio communications. Maria knew she had perhaps 30 seconds before the helicopter would lift off and disappear into the desert sky. She made her decision. Maria keyed her radio and spoke quickly. Command, this is Staff Sergeant Santos at the ammunition depot. I need to speak with Colonel Harrison immediately regarding the priority mission. It's urgent. The radio fell silent for a moment before Harrison's familiar voice responded. Santos, what's your status? That bird needs to be in the air in 60 seconds. Sir, I need to report a situation regarding the pilot markings protocol. Can you meet me at the depot immediately? There was another pause, longer this time. Maria could hear the Apache's engines cycling up for takeoff. Morrison would be wondering why he hadn't received departure clearance yet. "Hold that aircraft on the ground," Harrison's voice commanded through the radio. "I'm en route to your position. Do not let that helicopter leave the tarmac." Maria immediately switched to the tower frequency. "Tower control, this is Santos. Hold departure clearance for Apache 77 pending command authorization." Through her radio, she could hear the confusion in the air traffic controller's voice. "Copy, Santos. Holding Apache 77 on the ground. Pilot is requesting reason for delay." Maria watched as Morrison turned in his cockpit to look toward the ammunition depot. Even from a distance, she could see his puzzled expression. He keyed his radio and asked for clarification on the delay, but the tower could only tell him to stand by for further instructions. Colonel Harrison arrived at the ammunition depot in less than 3 minutes, moving faster than Maria had ever seen him move. His face was serious, almost grim, as he approached her position. "Show me," he said without any greeting or pleasantries. Maria handed him the sealed envelope and pointed toward the Apache where Morrison was still waiting in the cockpit. "The tattoo matches exactly, sir. Eagle with spread wings and the 3 symbols underneath, just like in the photographs." Harrison studied the photos again, then pulled out a pair of binoculars to observe Morrison from a distance. "You're certain about the match?" "Absolutely certain, sir. I saw it clearly when he was helping me verify the ammunition load." Harrison lowered the binoculars and was quiet for several long moments. Maria could see he was wrestling with a difficult decision. Finally, he spoke. "Santos, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. That tattoo represents membership in an organization we've been tracking for months. We have reason to believe there are deep cover operatives within our own military structure." Maria's blood ran cold. "Sir, are you saying Captain Morrison is a spy?" "We're not sure what he is," Harrison replied grimly. "But that tattoo is associated with a group that has been linked to leaked mission intelligence and compromised operations. 3 missions in the past 6 months have resulted in ambushes that suggest someone with inside knowledge provided enemy forces with detailed information." The implications hit Maria like a physical blow. If Morrison was providing intelligence to enemy forces, then the ammunition she had just loaded onto his helicopter could be used against American troops. The special reconnaissance mission could be a cover for something far more sinister. "What do we do now, sir?" Harrison keyed his radio. "Security team to the flight line immediately. Approach Apache 77 with caution." He turned back to Maria. "We're going to detain Morrison for questioning and scrub this mission entirely." As they watched, a team of military police vehicles approached the helicopter from multiple directions. Morrison must have seen them coming because the Apache's engines suddenly increased to maximum power. "He's trying to take off," Maria shouted over the increasing noise. The helicopter lifted slightly off the tarmac, but the military police vehicles had positioned themselves to block any escape route. Morrison's voice came through the radio, demanding to know what was happening and insisting he had a critical mission to complete. "Apache 77, shut down your engines immediately," Harrison commanded through the radio. "This is a direct order from Colonel Harrison. You are to exit the aircraft and submit to security protocols." Instead of complying, Morrison increased power further. The Apache rose higher, its landing gear retracting. Maria realized with horror that he was actually going to attempt an escape. "Sir, he's got a full ammunition load," she warned Harrison. "Hellfire missiles, rockets, thousands of rounds for the chain gun. If he's really working with enemy forces." Harrison was already on his radio calling for air support. "Scramble the alert fighters immediately. We have a potentially hostile Apache attempting to leave the base with a full combat load." The Apache pivoted in the air and began moving toward the base perimeter at high speed. Morrison was an excellent pilot, and he was using that skill to evade the ground vehicles that were trying to intercept him. Maria watched in disbelief as the helicopter she had just loaded with ammunition disappeared over the desert landscape. Everything had changed in a matter of minutes. A routine mission had become a potential security nightmare, and she was the one who had triggered it all by recognizing a tattoo. "Santos," Harrison said, his voice heavy with the weight of the situation. "I need you to tell me everything you remember about your interactions with Morrison. Every conversation, Every time you loaded ammunition for his aircraft, anything that seemed unusual or out of place. As Maria began recounting her limited interactions with the pilot, she realized how little she actually knew about him. Morrison had always been professional and competent, but he had also been somewhat distant. He never engaged in the casual conversation that was common among soldiers, never talked about home or family or plans for after deployment. "Sir, there was one thing," Maria said, remembering a detail from several weeks earlier. "Last month, when I was loading ammunition for a training exercise, I noticed Morrison taking photographs of the ammunition specifications. When I asked about it, he said he was documenting procedures for a training manual he was writing." Harrison's expression darkened. Did he photograph anything specific? The serial numbers and lot numbers of the ammunition, the loading procedures, the safety protocols. At the time it seemed reasonable, but now it looks like intelligence gathering, Harrison finished. Those serial numbers could be used to track ammunition shipments, identify supply routes, predict operational capabilities. The reality of the situation was becoming clearer and more frightening by the minute. If Morrison had been photographing ammunition specifications for months, he could have provided enemy forces with detailed information about American military capabilities and supplies. Harrison's radio crackled with an update from the pursuit team. "Colonel, Apache 77 is maintaining course toward the Pakistani border. Estimated time to border crossing is 12 minutes. F-16 interceptors are airborne and closing on his position." Maria felt sick. A man she had worked with for months, a pilot she had trusted with some of the most powerful weapons in the American arsenal, was apparently fleeing toward enemy territory with a full load of ammunition. Her decision to report the tattoo may have prevented a much larger disaster, but it had also set in motion a chain of events that could end tragically. "Sir," she asked quietly, "what happens if they can't stop him before he reaches the border?" Harrison's face was grim as he answered. "Then, we'll have to assume that everything we've been planning, every operation Morrison has been briefed on, every piece of intelligence he's had access to is now compromised. We'll have to start over completely." The sound of jet engines overhead indicated that the F-16 interceptors had arrived on scene. Maria looked up to see their contrails streaking across the clear desert sky, knowing that somewhere ahead of them, a drama was unfolding that would determine the fate of countless military operations and possibly save or cost many lives. The radio communications between the F-16 interceptors and command filled the air with urgent, clipped military jargon. Maria stood beside Colonel Harrison, listening to every transmission as the drama unfolded in the skies above the Afghan desert. "Viper flight, this is control. Target is Apache 77, bearing 270 at low altitude. Pilot is to be considered potentially hostile. Attempt radio contact first, weapons free if necessary." Maria's hands trembled as she heard the weapons authorization. The same Apache helicopter she had carefully loaded with ammunition just hours ago was now being pursued by fighter jets with orders to shoot it down if necessary. "Apache 77, this is Viper 11. You are ordered to return to base immediately. Change course to 090 and follow us back to FOB Phoenix." Morrison's voice came through the radio, and for the first time since this began, he sounded different. Gone was the professional calm she was used to hearing. Now there was an edge of desperation, maybe even panic. "Viper 11, I have critical intelligence that must reach its destination. This mission cannot be aborted. I repeat, this mission is vital to ongoing operations." Colonel Harrison grabbed the radio microphone. "Morrison, this is Colonel Harrison. There is no authorized mission. You are AWOL with stolen military equipment and ammunition. Return to base immediately or face the consequences." There was silence on the radio for several long moments. When Morrison spoke again, his voice had changed completely. The American accent was gone, replaced by something else, subtle, but definitely there. "Colonel, you have made a serious mistake. The information I carry is worth more than you can imagine. I suggest you call off your interceptors before this situation becomes much worse for everyone involved." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. This was definitely not the same man she had been working with for months. The voice, the accent, even the way he constructed his sentences was different. It was as if Morrison had dropped a mask he had been wearing for years. Viper flight. Target is continuing toward the border. Time to intercept. Control, we're closing fast. Target is flying nap of the Earth, using terrain masking. This guy knows what he's doing. Harrison turned to Maria with a grim expression. Santos, I need you to think carefully. In all your interactions with Morrison, did he ever ask about other missions? Other aircraft? Ammunition supplies for the entire base? Maria thought back through months of routine encounters. Sir, there was something. About 6 weeks ago, Morrison asked me about ammunition storage procedures. He wanted to know how much ammunition we typically kept in reserve, how often shipments arrived, what our maximum capacity was for different types of rounds. And you told him? Yes, sir. It seemed like a reasonable question from a pilot who might need to plan for extended operations. Maria felt sick as she realized how she had been manipulated. He said he was working on operational planning for his squadron commander. Harrison shook his head. Morrison has never been assigned to operational planning duties. He was gathering intelligence about our supply capabilities. The radio crackled again with an update from the pursuit. Control, target has just launched chaff and flares. He's definitely expecting to be engaged. Maria watched Harrison's face grow even more serious. Chaff and flares were defensive measures used to confuse incoming missiles. Morrison was preparing for combat with his own country's aircraft. Sir, Maria said quietly, there's something else. Last week Morrison asked me about the new ammunition that had arrived. He wanted to know about the special marking system on some of the newer rounds. I showed him how to read the lot numbers and manufacturing codes. What kind of ammunition? The new armor-piercing rounds for the chain gun, and the latest version of the Hellfire missiles. He said he needed to understand the capabilities for mission planning. Harrison's radio crackled with an urgent transmission. Colonel, this is Viper 1-1. Target has just fired a missile. I repeat, Apache 77 has fired a Hellfire missile in our direction. The sound of jet engines overhead suddenly became much louder as the F-16s maneuvered aggressively to avoid the incoming missile. Maria looked up to see vapor trails crisscrossing the sky as the fighter pilots tried to evade Morrison's attack. Viper 1-1, you are cleared to return fire. I repeat, weapons free. Take down that Apache before it reaches the border. What happened next was both terrifying and mesmerizing. High above the desert, a deadly game of cat and mouse played out between the stolen Apache helicopter and 2 F-16 Fighting Falcons. Morrison was using every trick he knew to stay alive, flying close to the ground, using the terrain to mask his approach, and firing his weapons with the skill of a combat veteran. But he was also outnumbered and outgunned. The F-16s had superior speed and altitude advantage, plus air-to-air missiles designed specifically for engaging other aircraft. Control, Viper 1-2 has lock-on. Fox 2, Fox 2. The radio call indicated that one of the F-16s had fired an air-to-air missile at Morrison's helicopter. Maria held her breath, knowing that the ammunition she had loaded might be about to detonate in a ball of fire in the sky. Several seconds passed before the next transmission. Control, that's a miss. Target used terrain masking and chaff. We're repositioning for another engagement. Morrison's voice came through the radio one more time, and now he sounded completely different from the American pilot they had known. You Americans are so predictable. Your pilots fly like they are in training exercises. I have been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Harrison grabbed Maria's arm. 3 years. That's exactly how long Morrison has been assigned to this base. Santos, think about everything he's had access to during that time. Every mission you've loaded ammunition for. Every conversation he's overheard. Every document he could have seen. The enormity of the security breach was staggering. For 3 years, an enemy operative had been living and working among them, gathering intelligence about American military operations, capabilities, and procedures. He had flown combat missions, participated in briefings, and had access to classified information that could compromise operations across the entire theater. Sir, the special ammunition load I prepared today, what was that really for? Harrison's face was stone-cold serious. That was bait. We've suspected there was a leak in our operations for months. Today's mission was designed to see if sensitive information would be passed to enemy forces. The ammunition load contained tracking devices and The mission briefing included false information about future operations. Maria realized she had been part of an elaborate counterintelligence operation without even knowing it. So when I reported the tattoo, you confirmed our suspicions about Morrison specifically. The tattoo was one of several indicators we were watching for. Your training and attention to detail may have saved a lot of lives. The radio erupted with another urgent transmission. Control, target is 2 minutes from the border. If we're going to stop him, it has to be now. Viper Flight, you are cleared for maximum engagement. Do not allow that aircraft to cross into Pakistani airspace under any circumstances. High above them, the final phase of the aerial pursuit was about to begin. Morrison had proven to be a skilled and dangerous opponent, but he was running out of space and options. The border with Pakistan represented safety for him, but it also represented a major intelligence disaster for American forces if he managed to escape with the information he had gathered. Maria looked up at the contrails in the sky, knowing that somewhere among them, a drama was reaching its climax that would determine the fate of countless future military operations. The ammunition she had loaded that morning had become part of a deadly game played out at 300 miles per hour in the thin air above the Afghan desert. Control, this is Viper 1-1. We have target in sight, low altitude, approaching the border. Engaging now. The next few seconds felt like hours as Maria and Colonel Harrison listened to the radio communications from the aerial engagement. High above the desert, Morrison was making his final desperate attempt to escape while the F-16 pilots were executing their last chance to stop him before he crossed into Pakistani airspace. Viper 1-2, I have tone. Target is in the open, no terrain masking available. Take the shot, Viper 1-2. Take the shot now. Maria closed her eyes, unable to watch the sky any longer. Despite everything she now knew about Morrison, despite his deception and betrayal, she had worked alongside him for months. The thought of the Apache she had carefully loaded exploding in the air was almost too much to bear. Fox 2. Missile away. The radio fell silent except for the background static of military communications. Maria opened her eyes and looked up at the sky, searching for any sign of the engagement. In the distance, she could see the contrails of the F-16s, but nothing else was visible from their position on the ground. Then she saw it. A black plume of smoke rising from a point on the horizon, near where the border should be. The smoke was thick and dark, the kind that comes from burning aircraft fuel and ammunition. Control, this is Viper 1-1. Target is down. I repeat, Apache 77 is down approximately 1 mile inside Pakistani territory. We have a large secondary explosion, probably from the ammunition load detonating. Colonel Harrison closed his eyes and let out a long breath. It's over, he said quietly. But Maria wasn't so sure it was over. Sir, if Morrison crashed inside Pakistani territory, what happens to all the intelligence he was carrying? What if he survived the crash? Harrison's expression grew serious again. You're right to be concerned. Even if Morrison didn't survive, any documents or electronic devices he was carrying could still fall into the wrong hands. He keyed his radio. Command, this is Colonel Harrison. We need immediate coordination with Pakistani authorities for crash site security. Priority Alpha classification. As they walked back toward the command center, Harrison began explaining to Maria just how extensive the security breach had been. Morrison had access to operational schedules, ammunition inventories, aircraft maintenance records, pilot duty rosters, and communications protocols. For 3 years, he's been in a position to observe and report on virtually every aspect of our military operations. How did he get through the security screening process? That's what we're going to have to find out. His background check came back clean when he was assigned here. Either his documentation was extremely sophisticated, or he had help from someone with access to official records. They entered the command center to find it buzzing with activity. Intelligence officers were already working to assess the damage from Morrison's betrayal, while communications specialists were coordinating with higher command to determine which operations might have been compromised. Major Williams, the base intelligence officer, approached them with a tablet computer. Colonel, we've been analyzing Morrison's access logs for the past 6 months. The pattern is troubling. He showed them a chart displaying Morrison's activities on the base. Look at this. 3 days before every major operation, Morrison submitted maintenance requests that required him to be present during ammunition loading procedures. He was essentially documenting our entire tactical capability. Maria studied the chart and felt her stomach drop. Those maintenance requests always seemed legitimate. He said he wanted to ensure his aircraft was properly prepared for missions. And you provided him with detailed information about ammunition types, quantities, and loading procedures, Williams added. Information that would be invaluable to enemy forces planning defensive operations. The scope of Morrison's intelligence gathering was becoming clearer by the minute. He hadn't just been a passive observer. He had actively manipulated situations to gain access to classified information, and he had done it so skillfully that experienced military personnel had unknowingly assisted him. Harrison's radio crackled with an update from the crash site. "Colonel, this is Rescue 6. We have Pakistani military personnel securing the crash site. Initial reports suggest the aircraft was completely destroyed, but we're requesting permission to conduct our own investigation." "Negative, Rescue 6. We cannot cross the border. Work through diplomatic channels and coordinate with Pakistani authorities." Maria realized the implications immediately. "Sir, if Pakistani forces recover anything from that crash, and if Morrison was working with their intelligence services, then they'll have detailed information about our operations, our capabilities, and our procedures," Harrison finished. "This could affect military planning for years to come." Major Williams looked up from his tablet with new information. "Colonel, we found something else." Morrison had been submitting reports about ammunition storage and handling procedures to what he claimed was a military training database. But we can't find any record of such a database existing. He was sending intelligence reports disguised as training documentation, Harrison said grimly. "How many reports?" 14 over the past 8 months. Each one detailed different aspects of our ammunition handling, storage capacity, security procedures, and inventory management. Maria felt responsible for every piece of information Morrison had gathered. "Sir, I answered all his questions because they seemed legitimate. He was a pilot asking about ammunition procedures. It never occurred to me that he might be a spy." Harrison put his hand on her shoulder. "Santos, don't blame yourself. Morrison was a professional intelligence operative. He was trained to manipulate people and situations to gather information. The fact that you recognized the tattoo and reported it according to your orders is what exposed him. But what about all the damage he's already done?" "We'll deal with that," Harrison replied. "Right now, we need to focus on damage control and making sure this doesn't happen again." An urgent transmission came through the radio from the Pakistani border. "Control, this is Viper 1-1. We have movement at the crash site. Pakistani military vehicles are arriving in large numbers. It looks like they're conducting a major recovery operation." Harrison grabbed the radio. "Viper 1-1, maintain observation, but do not cross the border under any circumstances. Document everything you can see, but stay in Afghan airspace." Through the command center's large windows, Maria could see other aircraft being prepared for emergency missions. The base was shifting into high alert status as the implications of Morrison's escape attempt became clear to everyone involved. "Santos," Harrison said, "I need you to prepare a detailed report of every interaction you had with Morrison. Every question he asked, every procedure he observed, every piece of information he had access to during ammunition loading operations. Intelligence needs to understand exactly what he learned while he was here." As Maria began working on her report, she realized that the tattoo she had spotted that morning was just the beginning of a much larger story. Morrison's deception had been years in the making, and the consequences of his intelligence gathering would affect military operations far beyond their small forward operating base. The radio crackled again with news from the crash site. "Control, Pakistani forces have established a large perimeter around the wreckage. They're bringing in specialized equipment, probably for intelligence recovery operations." Maria looked up from her report with a sinking feeling. Even though Morrison was gone, his mission might still be successful. Whatever information he had gathered during his 3 years of deception was now in the hands of foreign intelligence services, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. 3 weeks after Morrison's dramatic escape attempt and crash, Maria found herself sitting in a secure briefing room at Bagram Airfield, facing a panel of intelligence officers from various agencies. The investigation into Morrison's activities had expanded far beyond their small forward operating base, revealing a sophisticated intelligence network that had been operating within the U.S. military for years. General Patricia Rodriguez, the senior intelligence officer leading the investigation, opened a thick file folder and looked directly at Maria. Staff Sergeant Santos, your actions on the day in question may have prevented one of the most significant intelligence disasters in recent military history. Maria shifted uncomfortably in her chair. For weeks, she had been replaying that morning in her mind, wondering if she could have acted differently, faster, or with more certainty. Ma'am, I only followed the protocols in my orders. Following protocols exactly as trained is what good soldiers do, General Rodriguez replied. But your attention to detail and quick thinking under pressure saved countless lives and operations. Major Williams, who had been part of the investigation from the beginning, opened his laptop and displayed a presentation on the wall screen. What we've discovered about Morrison's operation is both impressive and terrifying. He wasn't working alone. The first slide showed a network diagram with Morrison's photograph in the center, connected to at least a dozen other military personnel across different bases and branches of service. Morrison was part of a deep-cover intelligence cell that had been gathering information about American military capabilities for over 5 years. Maria stared at the diagram in shock. Sir, are you saying there were others like him? Exactly. Morrison was what intelligence professionals call a node in a larger network. His job was to gather specific technical intelligence about ammunition, weapons systems, and tactical procedures. Other members of the cell focused on communications, logistics, operational planning, and personnel management. General Rodriguez took over the briefing. The tattoo you recognized was actually a sophisticated identification system. Each member of the cell had similar markings, but with subtle variations that indicated their specific role and area of focus. She showed Maria a series of photographs displaying different versions of the eagle tattoo. Each one had the same basic design, but the symbols underneath varied slightly. Morrison's symbols indicated he was responsible for weapons and ammunition intelligence. Others had different symbols for their respective specialties. How did you discover this network? Your report about Morrison's intelligence gathering activities led us to examine other personnel with similar access patterns, Major Williams explained. When we started looking for the tattoo variations, we found 7 other individuals across 3 different military installations. Maria felt a chill as she realized the scope of what they had uncovered. Have they all been arrested? 6 have been detained for questioning. 1 disappeared from his duty station the same day Morrison made his escape attempt. We believe the network was designed with built-in warning systems that alerted other members when one of them was compromised. General Rodriguez pulled up another slide showing a timeline of Morrison's activities. Based on your detailed report and other evidence we've gathered, Morrison collected information about ammunition storage, weapons capabilities, tactical procedures, and operational planning for 3 years. This intelligence was then passed to enemy forces, who used it to plan ambushes and defensive operations. The 3 missions that resulted in unexpected ambushes, Maria said, remembering Colonel Harrison's earlier explanation. Those were just the beginning. Morrison's intelligence was so detailed that enemy forces were able to predict our ammunition expenditure rates, anticipate our tactical responses, and position their forces to maximum advantage. We estimate that his activities led to at least 15 American casualties and the failure of several critical operations. Maria felt sick. She had unknowingly helped Morrison gather information that had cost soldiers their lives. Ma'am, if I had been more suspicious, more careful about the information I provided. Sergeant, stop, General Rodriguez interrupted. You were dealing with a professional intelligence operative who had years of training in manipulation and deception. He fooled everyone, not just you. The fact that you followed your orders and reported the tattoo when you saw it is what broke open this entire network. Major Williams continued the briefing. The Pakistani authorities recovered significant electronic equipment from Morrison's crashed helicopter, including encrypted communications devices and data storage units. While we can't confirm exactly what information they obtained, we have to assume that years of intelligence gathering is now in enemy hands. What does that mean for ongoing operations? It means we've had to completely restructure our tactical procedures, change our ammunition handling protocols, modify our communication systems, and alter our operational planning processes, General Rodriguez explained. Essentially, we've had to assume that everything Morrison had access to is now known to enemy forces. She showed Maria one final slide, displaying the official commendation she would be receiving. Staff Sergeant Santos, your actions on that day prevented Morrison from completing what appears to have been a final intelligence-gathering mission. The ammunition load you prepared contained tracking devices and false technical specifications designed to mislead enemy analysts. If Morrison had successfully delivered that information, enemy forces would have received deliberately false data about our newest ammunition capabilities, leading them to make tactical errors based on incorrect intelligence. Your decision to follow protocols and report the tattoo allowed us to capture him in the act of stealing that false information. Maria looked at the commendation certificate, still struggling to understand how a routine ammunition loading procedure had turned into such a complex intelligence operation. General, how do we prevent something like this from happening again? Enhanced security screening, more sophisticated background investigations, regular review of personnel access patterns, and improved training for recognizing potential security threats, Rodriguez replied. But, ultimately, it comes down to soldiers like you following their training and trusting their instincts when something doesn't seem right. As the briefing concluded, Maria realized that her morning routine of checking ammunition loads and following protocols had intersected with a years-long intelligence operation that spanned multiple military installations and foreign intelligence services. The tattoo she had spotted during Morrison's pre-flight inspection had been the key that unlocked a massive security investigation. Walking out of the briefing room, Maria thought about all the soldiers whose lives might have been saved because she had followed her orders exactly as trained. The weight of responsibility she had carried for weeks began to lift as she understood that her actions had been correct and necessary. General Rodriguez caught up with her in the hallway. Sergeant, one more thing. The intelligence community is always looking for personnel with your attention to detail and ability to follow protocols under pressure. If you're ever interested in expanding your career beyond ammunition handling, there are opportunities available. Maria smiled for the first time in weeks. Thank you, ma'am. Right now, I think I'll stick with loading ammunition. But it's good to know I'll be more careful about who I'm loading it for. As she walked back to her quarters, Maria reflected on how a single moment of recognizing a tattoo had changed everything. Morrison's carefully constructed identity had been destroyed by one small detail that he couldn't hide, and years of intelligence gathering had been exposed by her willingness to follow orders even when she wasn't sure they made sense. The desert sun was setting over Bagram airfield as Maria prepared to return to her unit and resume her duties loading ammunition for helicopter missions. But now she understood that even routine military procedures could be part of larger operations she might never fully understand, and that following protocols exactly as trained was one of the most important contributions any soldier could make to national security. The eagle tattoo with its mysterious symbols had been Morrison's identification within a sophisticated spy network, but it had also been his downfall. Maria's recognition of those symbols, and her decision to follow her orders despite uncertainty, had ended a years-long intelligence operation and potentially saved countless lives. In the end, it hadn't been advanced technology or sophisticated counterintelligence techniques that exposed Morrison's network. It had been a staff sergeant doing her job exactly as she had been trained, paying attention to details, and trusting the protocols that had been established by people who understood threats she couldn't even imagine. As Maria prepared for another day of loading ammunition and supporting helicopter missions, she knew she would never look at routine procedures the same way again. Every interaction, every protocol, every detail could be part of something much larger than she realized, and her role in maintaining security was more important than she had ever imagined.